Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barito. Let's take a look at the headlines. Local government minister calls on NGOs and businesses to join the ministry's National Commission for Self-Help to assist in delivery of over 100 homes to persons annually. The Minister of the People and Social Development calls on all citizens to be their neighbor's keeper. And youth in today's society will be given the opportunity to embrace their self-worth, discuss peer pressure, and discover their purpose. Thank you for joining us. Local Government Minister Dr. The Honorable Suraj Ratan Rambachan is calling on NGOs and businesses to join with the ministry's National Commission for Self-Help to assist in delivery of over 100 homes to persons annually over a 3-year basis. The extension is based on providing helping hands for the construction of homes for persons who are in need of some financial assistance for getting their homes completed. Speaking at a workshop for the training of staff members charged with the responsibility for the administration of the program, Minister Rambachan says his ministry is also looking into the provision of labor through the workforce available under the URP program.
Minister of Local Government Dr. Suraj Rambachan is extending a call to NGOs such as Habitat for Humanity to join forces and come together to lend assistance to persons in need of building their own homes, but who are unable to do so due to a lack of resources and a shortage of funds. His comments come on the heels of Finance Minister Larry Hawaii announcing in his budget presentation the construction of 100 homes per year over the next 3 years.
Self-Help has been given a very important mandate this year, which is to build 100 houses for the indigent, the very poor, and to help improve the quality of lives of those people. In this regard, I am talking to Habitat for Humanity, who has a program for building houses, and I'm also talking to the various service organizations, particularly the Rotary Club and the Lions Club, to see how they can join with us in this project, because they themselves are very interested in doing service to the community. And I will be very prepared through Self-Help to provide the material resources so that they can help us with the labor component, so that people can come out and feel good about doing something good for the benefit of another person. So we have targeted 100 houses for this year, 100 houses for next year, and 100 houses for the following year. We hope to affect an impact positively upon the lives of at least 300 householders and their families, people who would not be able to assist themselves in any way without that kind of help.
He was speaking at a training seminar for staff at the various corporations and city councils aimed at making application for self-help assistance easier and more accessible to the public. Training is being conducted by the ministry in collaboration with the National Self-Help Commission. The minister says it's about getting the true meaning of self-help as a form of empowerment to the people.
We want to deliver to people what they need in order to improve their lives. But self-help is exactly what it means, self-help. We expect the individual who we are assisting or the community who we are assisting to also put in equity, whether it's equity in terms of material resources or equity in terms of labor, but they must in fact put in equity, otherwise the whole concept of self-help will be lost. What I find happening increasingly is that people expect self-help to do everything for them. And perhaps in a little way self-help has deviated from the definition of self-help, and we got to return to the whole idea of what truly is self-help.
Minister Rambachan says the initiative will also seek to utilize the skills and labor of members in the URP for the completion of these houses under the provision of materials through the National Self-Help Program.
If you are giving materials to someone and that person cannot in fact provide the labor, it will be in my great interest to provide the labor through self-help, so that they, through URP, so that they can go on and do productive work. Because I am in the process of transforming the URP program, and I'm doing so very, very quickly.
Earlier this year, the National Commission for Self-Help was moved from Ministry of Community Development to the Ministry of Local Government in an effort to provide services in a more streamlined manner to citizens across Trinidad and Tobago through the regional corporations. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
A three-day workshop targeting the improvement of strategies in maritime security is being hosted in Trinidad and Tobago in collaboration with the United States Coast Guard and the Government of Canada. The aim is to unite Caribbean nations to work together in the fight against the drug trade, while at the same time reinforce current measures that secure borders and ports along the coast. Chief of the U.S. Coast Guard International Port Security, Michael Brown, says collaborative efforts is the only way to counteract ever-increasing threats to security in the region.
The Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism of the Organization of American States is calling for regional partners to come together in securing all maritime borders in the fight against the international drug trade. This as statistics show that over 90% of international trade conducted takes place in proximity to water courses. The comments were made as the Organization of American States kick-started its sub-regional workshop on maritime security, risk assessment and management, which is being hosted here in Trinidad. Nicholas Letts, project manager of the Maritime and Security Program Committee based at the OAS, says providing secure ports meant protecting the Caribbean from being a transshipment point for drugs and illegal weapons.
We must not overlook the importance of maritime security in our region. With over 90% of international trade being conducted through global waterways, security at port facilities and installations should be a priority for all states. The interconnected nature of the global supply chain invariably means that any incident or threat in one of the ports in the region will have negative consequences far beyond that single port or country. And it is in our collective interest to work together to ensure our maritime borders are adequately protected.
Michael Brown, Chief of the U.S. Coast Guard International Port Security, says while attempting to provide such security is a challenge, working together was the only way to achieve this feat.
No one country, no one government, no one organization has all the answers and can do everything by themselves. It is only by working collaboratively and jointly that we can be successful. I think we all know that the enemies that we face are creative, inventive, and ruthless. As we develop a countermeasure, they seek to develop a different sort of threat. That's why risk assessments and looking at the risks that our enemies might pose are so important.
While National Security Minister Jack Warner was unable to attend due to urgent commitments in his constituency, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Mrs. Jennifer Boucard-Blake, notes that securing our maritime parameters meant also securing our economy.
The maritime sector is a crucial component in the economic development of all our states in the Caribbean region. Billions of dollars worth of merchandise are traded every year via seaports. Further, given our geostrategic location, this region is also a prime transshipment point for illicit goods destined to North America and European markets. As such, identifying and managing maritime risks is extremely significant for our economic development and our national security.
The two-day workshop is being held in collaboration with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Canadian government and is said to have united over 12 regional countries, providing participants with an opportunity to learn vessel risk assessment and management techniques and the use of port security risk assessment tools. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Dr. the Honorable Glenn Ramadas Singh, Minister of the People and Social Development, is calling on all citizens to be their neighbor's keeper and to start developing better relationships with them to help in the fight against poverty. The minister made the announcement while speaking at the Poverty Reduction Day function in commemoration with a micro-enterprise exhibition in Penal.
It's the occasion of Poverty Reduction Day commemoration and micro-enterprise exhibition in recognition of World Food Day. Speaking at a function in Penal, the minister says Poverty Reduction Day has been observed since 1993, when the United Nations General Assembly designated a day to promote the awareness for the need to eradicate poverty and destitution in countries. The minister underscored that poverty is not a shame, and persons experiencing this deficiency should not give up the fight.
And to give up that fight is disgraceful. And therefore what we are doing here today is exposing you to the tools of empowerment, to the tools of hope, and to the tools of engagement that are present and resident in government agencies and that are present and resident in the private sector. Such as you have the rice farmers are here, you have the Beekeepers Association. They are showing you that you can make a living through the natural resources of Trinidad and Tobago.
The Penal Regional and Social Development Committee has been working towards poverty reduction throughout the year by having a number of outreach programs under the leadership of Mr. Osborne Taylor. This exhibition is the culmination of their efforts and energies, and the committee has been working very feverishly to bring about this project in the community. The minister sought to define extreme poverty as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago.
My friends here in Trinidad and Tobago, walking among us, praying with us in our churches, mosques and temples, and living near to us are persons inflicted with extreme poverty. We all have a responsibility to give our fellow citizens who are struggling daily to survive help and hope. And I remember that it was not only approximately a year ago, I got a call from a media house about children living in dire poverty, and that insects were crawling all over the beds and the home and the kitchen and so on. And when we indeed visited that family, the mother had about 9 children. And later on we were able to help them to get a home, not only a house, by trying to get jobs for the children and get them back in school.
Dr. Ramadar Singh says he wishes that people would adopt a kind of brotherly love for their neighbors, whereby a sense of care and concern would be brought back into communities throughout the country.
After the Lord himself said, look, if you find 10 commandments too difficult to understand, I just give you 2. Love the Lord thyself as thy God, and love your neighbor as yourself. And how many of us can really bring ourselves to begin to think about doing that? In fact, the neighbor is the first person you fall out with. As a matter of fact, if you see a 20-inch TV being delivered by Courts, next week you go in and bring a 25-inch. And if they buy a 25-inch too, next week you want to get a 30-inch. In direct competition and contradiction with our neighbors who should be our greatest friend.
Minister Ramadar Singh says that if Trinidad and Tobago is to be a better place, one must begin to look out for those who need help and assistance. He also notes that he is pleased to be a part of the exhibition, which is aimed at developing business and micro-enterprise in the area of Penal. News 4 understands that it is the 4th annual agriculture exhibition, and we're told it is to demonstrate micro-skill activities that can easily be adopted by anyone. The emphasis of the function is the awareness that agriculture is the way in eradicating poverty. Approximately 15 schools were invited to take part and to get involved in this initiative. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
Minister of Trade and Industry, the Honorable Vasant Bharath, is promising to increase Trinidad and Tobago's global competitiveness by the year 2015. He makes the promise as the debate continues on the 2012-2013 budget.
We are going to be in a position to catapult Trinidad and Tobago into the top tier of ease of doing business in 3 years' time. And it's not empty rhetoric. The work has begun already, Madam Vice President. The single electronic window, popularly known as the TT BizLink, allows individuals now and businesses to be able to obtain on a real-time basis certificates of origin, work permits, import duty concessions, and trade permits and licenses instantly. Something that previously would have taken several weeks, several days to gotten, you can now get it instantly online. But in addition to that, Madam Vice President, we currently operate through Customs and Excise a parallel system called the Asikuda system.
Asikuda allows for increased services for the trade community, simpler procedures, easier documentation, increased capabilities for accounting, and the implementation of standards defined by ISO, the UN, and the World Trade Organization. This system also provides full support for e-government and has the capability to interoperate online with external governmental systems and databases. The minister announces plans for both Asikuda and the single electronic window to be merged before year's end. He says this will be accompanied by the amending of relevant laws to facilitate services such as electronic payments. This, Minister Barath says, will raise the country from its present ranking of 68th out of 183 countries in terms of ease of doing business.
We intend to merge both the Asikuda system and the single electronic window. And I have a commitment from the Comptroller and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Investment that will actually happen during this quarter. Before the end of December 31st, we will have both systems merged such that an importer or custom broker will be able to make declarations to the Customs and Excise Division and other government regulatory agencies at the same time. It does require an amendment to the Customs Act, which we will be bringing to Parliament very shortly. It does require, Madam Vice President, an amendment to the Exchequer and Auditor Act, which will allow the Comptroller of Customs to receive payments other than cash and certified checks. And it does require a proclamation of the Electronic Transactions Act, which will allow electronic signatures and electronic transactions for customs declarations.
Minister Barath warns that with the advent of wireless electronic financial transactions, these changes are necessary. He says it will greatly increase Trinidad and Tobago's chance of competing with other countries in attracting foreign direct investment. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
Wayne Cunningham has a sport report right after the break. Officials at the Ministry of Sport recently queried the accounting of all sports promotions in relation to funds provided by the government for the qualifying campaigns of national football teams during 2011. The Honourable Anil Roberts, Minister of Sport, addressed statements made by Financial Director of all sports promotions, Bruce Anansen, at a media conference held at the Ministry's offices. Wayne Cunningham has more.
The Minister of Sport gave the genesis of the involvement of all sport promotions with the Trinidad and Tobago Football Federation at a media conference on Wednesday afternoon.
The Ministry recognized Mr. Anthony Harford as chairman of the Authorization Committee last year. This Authorization Committee became necessary because the Trinidad and Tobago Football Federation was an insolvent organization which had been levied upon by the courts of Trinidad and Tobago. Furthermore, this Authorization Committee, chaired by Mr. Tony Harford, became necessary because the General Secretary of the TTFF at that time had produced an inflated, fraudulent request for funding with regards to the Brazil 2014 campaign. So this is why, one of the reasons why the ministry, the permanent secretary, could not deal with the then TTFF. So there was need because they were insolvent and because taxpayers' dollars were to go to football and football had to move forward. The Authorization Committee, you all were there in the thing, was brought about with certain members headed by Mr. Harford.
Minister Roberts went on to outline the problems encountered with all sports accounting regarding football programs and tournaments.
There are many letters since March 17th, 2012, from the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Sport requesting of Mr. Harford to reconcile certain accounts. That was to do with under 17 and under 23 and certain programs. Mr. Harford keeps playing semantics, and let's deal with the issues. He said that a statement of expenditure was dropped off by the ministry on January 16th. Yes, a statement of expenditure was dropped off. This statement of expenditure, in the minds of Tony Harford and of Mr. Bruce Ananson, president of Queen's Park Cricket Club, who has no local standard in this whatsoever, seem to have morphed into accounts, bills, invoices, and receipts. The ministry has certain processes. So when an NGB presents its accounts or statement of expenditure, it goes through a process. It goes to the accounting department, they may vet it, they pass it on, and then you come back around to your budget discussion. But there's one thing that happens every year in Trinidad and Tobago. There is an independent institution called the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Auditor General reviews every single ministry, audits it annually. The Auditor General, in reviewing and auditing the accounts of the Ministry of Sport, wrote to the Permanent Secretary and instructed the Permanent Secretary that certain discrepancies, certain weaknesses in the accounting and supporting documentation for the Authorization Committee of the TTFF were missing. So the Permanent Secretary wrote to Mr. Harford on September 12th, alerting him to that fact. He had already written to him on March 17th, July 6th, and then again September 12th.
According to the minister, the issue could be easily solved.
This whole issue will finish over once Mr. Harford brings bills, invoices, and receipts. So this is a statement of expenditure. This is what is missing. So all the discussion about who want to go who and who don't like who and who ugly and so on is not. I am asking Mr. Harford to please do what the Auditor General asks, not Anil Roberts. Do what the Permanent Secretary, the Accounting Officer asks, and pass on the receipts, bills, and invoices to these people.
We in Cunningham, News 4 Sports.
More news after the break. Stay with us. Youth in today's society will be given the opportunity to embrace their self-worth, discuss peer pressure, and discover their purpose. This is being done through a workshop targeting teenagers titled Uniquely Worthy.
National non-profit organization United Way Trinidad and Tobago, or UWTT, has joined forces with BPTT to host the Uniquely Worthy workshop. The workshop is designed to address three areas which most affect young persons in society nowadays: peer pressure, self-esteem, and sense of purpose. The young persons attending the workshop will be challenged to help develop self-developmental programs in their schools. They will also be allowed to express themselves verbally while learning valuable lessons about themselves and their peers. Speaking at the launch of this year's workshops, former First Lady Zalia Hassanali says the program is a wonderful initiative with a name that suits the program's objective.
Uniquely Worthy is such a lovely name for them. The children feel uniquely worthy. They do feel uniquely worthy. And after the sessions, they are so full of worthiness and they're so full of themselves. They feel good about themselves. And this is what we want the young people to be. This is what we want them to be good and to realize that they are special in their own way. And they're all children of God. They all have a mission. They all have something to look forward to, and that they must serve, they must be good, they must be intelligent, they must be kind and gentle and think of others, care for their their peers, care for those in their classes and their school and everything else. So it's a wonderful program.
Meanwhile, program facilitator and motivational speaker Don Lafoucade laments the hands-off approach taken by many Trinbagonians on the youth of the nation. He explains that there are many young people who fall between the cracks and lose their sense of self-worth, but insists we must all do our part to prevent this from happening.
There are many names outside there who long for the opportunity, to understand that they are uniquely worthy. I want you to quote me on this. There are thousands of hurting young people in Trinidad and Tobago. They come out of the education system, the secondary system, and some of them get themselves very quickly into crime if they haven't started so in school. It has to stop. We are either part of the problem or part of the solution.
The one-day workshops will target secondary school students in North and South Trinidad and in Tobago. The 3 workshops will take place on October 27th at Paria Suites in La Romaine, November 2nd at Rovenel's Resort in Tobago, and on November 9th at Cascadia Hotel in St. Anne's. The workshops will cater for 600 students between the ages of 14 to 17. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you for joining us.